What up, Mike? Toronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love.
Welcome to episode 1466 of Toronto Mic'd, proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA and beyond. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. The Toronto Maple Leafs baseball team, the best baseball in the city, outside the dome, with Rod Black's mustache returning for the home opener at Christie Pitts on May 12th. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. The Advantaged Investor Podcast from Raymond James Canada. Valuable perspective for Canadian investors who want to remain knowledgeable, informed, and focused on long-term success. Season 6 of Yes, We Are Open, a Moneris podcast hosted by FOTM Al Grego and Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of the community since 1921. Today, returning for his Toronto Mic'd quarterly, is the Toronto Star's Ed Keenan.
1,466 episodes in, Mike. How you feeling?
Oh, I feel like I'm just getting started over here.
I can't have appeared on more than 300 or 400 of them. So you have had some other guests.
I've had other guests. They're just Mark Weisblatt and you, really.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
It is really good to see you, and you've made some improvements since the last time I was here.
Is there enhancements? What have you seen?
Including the Toronto Maple Leafs Baseball Club is now one of your partners, your sponsors.
Absolutely. And that book you're holding in your hand right now, Ed Keenan, that is the history of the Toronto Maple Leafs baseball team. That is yours.
Established in 1969. I actually haven't gone to see them in Christie Pitts in a couple of years. I know they've recently sold.
Well, can I get a commitment for you? What if you join me on May 12 at 2 p.m.
What day of the week is that?
That is Mother's Day.
I am running in a race that day, although that will be earlier in the day.
Because I'm going to have like a little section.
The mother of my children might have something to say about it, although... So there's a possibility that it will be a great Mother's Day gift for her if I take the kids out for the afternoon.
Yeah, okay, because if she did come, though, there would be like a pink flower. Like they would make a big deal for the moms in the crowd.
I understand they have a new concessions at the Toronto Maple Leafs Christie Pitts
baseball
complex.
Team. It's called Jack Domenico Field.
Right,
I believe it's the name.
After the longtime owner of the team.
And he's all over that history book, of course. But I would love to see you on May 12th. I got some really interesting people coming out, like yourself. And I'm just committed to you. Steve Paikin.
Well, that's always a draw for me.
Well, you and Paikin together, that's enough to draw anybody. But we got, like I mentioned, Rod Black. He's growing the mustache.
He's going to be there.
Of course, Rob Butler's the manager, by the way, 1993 World Series champion. But
it's been a while. The last time I went, is he a player manager or is he just a manager now?
He's like older than me.
The last time, pretty sure the last time I saw the Blue Jays, Rob Butler was playing for them. And
his brother, Rich and Rob played, and he hit the cover off the ball for that team. But I can tell you, Rick Vive, Rick Emmett, all the Ricks are going to be there. Stephen Brunt.
Rick Vive of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Is there another Rick Vive? Come on, Mr.
The longtime goal-scoring leader until very recently.
Until Austin Matthews, who hit like 63 last night. I think he's at 63 now. And we were all like enamored by Rick Vive and his 50 goals. He did it 3 years.
Yeah, I think he got 54 once.
Yeah, he got 54. Yeah. That was the record for a long time. And I remember Gary Lehman got 51, and then Dave Andrechuk.
Yeah.
Who did it. Well, he did one season, he split, and he hit 50, but half the games were with Buffalo. Yeah. And then with just the Leafs, he hit 50 again.
Absolutely.
That's like the trivia. This is just your 50 goal scores.
And that was all for history, for Toronto Maple Leafs history until now. Austin Matthews has hit 60 twice.
60, yeah, he's hit 60 twice. I guess we're out of time for him to hit 7. How many games left? Do you know?
No, it's possible. If he scores a goal a game, he gets to 7.
Okay.
That's
exciting.
Which I learned on the broadcast last night. If you break the season down into 8-game segments, there are 3 such segments where he scored more than a goal a game, 2 segments where he scored more than 15.
Wow.
He goes on a bender. So it's possible, entirely possible he scores 70, but he's at 63 now, which is a Toronto Maple Leafs record. And, I was thinking on the way here actually about the playoffs are around the corner. And like every Leafs fan, I am like really looking forward to the playoffs. And also I have a lifelong apprehension about the playoffs. There's a nervousness.
Sure.
And yet I have just had so much fun watching this season, just like other seasons. In a way, for entertainment value, this year's Toronto Maple Leafs really defensively leaky. Like the last couple of years, despite whatever happened in the playoffs and the heartbreak in that, they were one of the tightest defensive teams in the league. Everybody kept saying they need a number 1 defenseman and all of that, but team defense, they were really tight. And they're trying to play responsible. This year, they're kind of explosive offensively. They had weak goaltending at the start of the year. And so in terms of the entertainment value of games, Austin Matthews is even money to get a hat trick on any given night.
Right.
They can come back from a 5-goal deficit in the third period, but they can also blow a 5-goal deficit, a 5-goal lead in the third period. It's been a fun season to watch. Entertaining. And now I get to get all wound up for the playoffs. That gnawing in the pit of my stomach. But
if the season ended today, who's our first round opponent? Do you have that?
Florida Panthers.
Yeah, that's a tough series.
Yeah,
but Boston's a tough series too.
No, I know. In Boston,
there's not a lot of places to hide.
Runs deeper and longer with Boston too. So, my 15-year-old daughter who watches almost every Leafs game with me.
Okay, good for you.
But she has this kind of philosophical approach, or she's telling me, I've been her baseball coach all her life, and so she has this kind of baseball coachy wisdom, or the coachy wisdom, and she'll just say things like, nobody wants to play Boston or Florida, but you probably got to go through both of them to win the Stanley Cup, right? That's
wise words from a young woman.
There's no avoiding it. And if by chance you don't have to play Boston, it's because you have to play somebody who smoked them in the first round, right? So, anyhow.
Well, I'm looking forward to it as well. And later in this conversation, I'm going to talk to you about Toronto Blue Jays baseball. I want to talk to you about the Jays a little bit later in the conversation. There was a great moment before we came inside to record where you met Troy Birch from Great Lakes Brewery, and I was like, "There's my friend Ed Keenan from the Toronto Star, and there's Troy Birch from Great Lakes." And these people are just sort of they're going around your in your life, and they're just kind of like all of a sudden they collided in the driveway. It was a big moment for me.
Yeah, well, it was good to see him there. When I pulled up, I was a few minutes early,
right?
And so I was sort of checking my email in the car and stuff, and because I could see the Great Lakes Brewery car in the driveway, and I thought, well, obviously that's why I got bumped to 3:00.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And so suddenly I looked up and you guys were standing out there. But yeah, nice to meet Troy. He emailed me once to say some nice things about my book, which he read. And
what's that book again?
I think that's Some Great Idea. It is it needs an update, kind of. I don't know that I want to write the update, but it was sort of written as a cliffhanger when Rob Ford was still the mayor.
Right.
There was a lot of drama happening as the book went to press. And so if you read it now, I think there's a lot of good stuff in there about Toronto's history and some personal stuff and about Toronto's political situation that still holds true. But it kind of ends suddenly right before the crack scandal, actually.
Okay, you do need to update this book. Come on, we need a sequel. But did I hear in the driveway that you wrote a kid's book?
I did. I wrote a book called The Art of the Possible, which is an everyday guide to politics. Written with children, say grade 5 to 8 in mind, at about that.
But when did you write this?
Level.
Is this recent?
No, it was probably 6 years ago now. And it has been like a middle school curriculum book in parts of the United States. There was a school in Nashville that did an all-school read of it, and they like taught it for the entire middle school, like grades 5, 6, 7 for the whole, or 8 for the whole year. Like read it together, did classes around it, and all of that. So that is, it remains available in finer bookstores everywhere. The Art of the Possible, an Everyday Guide to Politics. It's got illustrations.
Well, watch out, Judy Bloom, because Ed Keenan's here to eat your lunch. Right? This is exciting to me. Like,
are you there, God? It's
And Beverly Cleary's dead, right? I feel like she lived to be like 110 years old, maybe. But I think we can shout out Ridley Funeral Home with her.
Was maybe one of my favorites as a kid, like those Ramona books. And she had I think it was her. Oh, now I don't know if it's her. There's this book called Skinny Bones, which I might have laughed more reading that book. And it was sort of like, certainly in the style of Beverly Cleary, but now that I'm thinking about it, it might not have been her.
I'm now going in to tell you that the Skinny Bones series, which is available from Penguin Random House, is by Barbara Park.
There you go, Barbara Park. Okay. So that's not your Beverly Cleary.
And I do I could Google it, but I think Beverly had a very long life. I'm going to say 104 years old or something like that, which is pretty good. Like imagine I told you, Ed, you're not halfway done your life yet. Okay?
Yeah.
Like that. What are you going to do with all that time? It's like you've lived a long life. You're going to do that again?
Well, I'll drink this Great Lakes Brewery Hop. Am I allowed to open this now, or do I have to wait for a promo?
No, do it now. No, well, I mean, we talked about how you met Troy Birch. I feel like that was the mention.
Right,
so in front of that mic, this is... So that's
Troy left behind this non-alcoholic drink for me. Yeah. I have actually sampled the Great Lakes Brewery Hop Pop before. I like it. It's kind of a...
Okay, I want one too.
Rather than I'm a big fan of like de-alcoholized beers. That new Guinness one is amazing. Actually, it tastes quite a lot like Guinness. Feels like Guinness in your mouth,
because they don't have this at Great Lakes. Like this does not exist yet.
But this Hop Pop doesn't?
No, the de-alcoholized beer.
Yeah. No.
They have no
so this is hop water,
right?
Which is kind of like a beer flavored sparkling water, but it's very refreshing.
Okay, I'm cracking one too. Okay, cheers to you, Ed Keenan. A lot of ground we're going to cover here. And
I'm not sure which part of my face and neck I'm supposed to put in front of the mic if I want to get that gulping sound on, but I don't know if it came through, but I had a very refreshing gulp of it.
You know, I'm big on the gulping sounds. Like it's like important to me. So, a lot of ground I want to cover. Where do I start? Maybe since we talked about Great Lakes, I just want to let the listenership know that we recorded the 5th episode of Between Two Fermenters, which is the official Great Lakes Brewery podcast. And Troy was interviewing the owner of the Island Cafe.
Oh,
and
boy.
Since you were here. Great, just terrible. I got all the details. I can tell you because I just today listened to the owner update Troy and I on everything. But the Island Cafe and the Ward's Island Clubhouse, of which it was part of, were destroyed by fire.
Yeah, and I went late last fall, just before the sort of islands closed for the year with my kids who hadn't been to the islands in 4 or 5 years because we had gone and lived in the United States and just hadn't gotten around to it since we came back. So we walked the whole length and we ate at the Island Cafe, and it was just like magical out on the patio there. It was just so good. And as it happens, my wife was going to do a artist residency, self-guided retreat there at the Artscape space, the former Artscape space on the islands. They have like little apartments that you can rent to work on art projects.
Amazing.
Or like a novel if you're a writer, whatever projects. But at this time of year, there's only, one ferry an hour from Wards or whatever. And there's no food available on the island. There are no restaurants open. There's no grocery stores there, so you have to bring all your own food. Except that the Island Cafe open on the weekends year-round. And so she had sort of built her whole menu around this plan that she would eat at the Island Cafe every opportunity she got while it was open while she was there.
Sure.
And then the day before she went, it burned down, which is actually like the least of the distressing things about it. I mean, that whole community there and the owners, it's a much more significant tragedy for them. but it was a minor tragedy in my wife. But so I was especially aware of it having happened because of that.
So here's what I learned today. I learned that the structure, the Wards Island Clubhouse, as it was known, was built in the 30s. This is what it completely burned. I learned that. I learned that the sign, I guess there was a local artist and the gentleman who we spoke to today, Zora, his father, who made the sign in the 80s for the Island Cafe. The sign has survived the fire. So if you're looking for a silver lining, like it survived the fire. And the gardens, they have these great gardens, and then they donate a lot of the kale and a lot of the vegetables to food banks. I believe a Parkdale food bank and various food banks in the city of Toronto. The gardens are left intact. Apparently the way the wind was blowing the gardens, but the structure itself is completely destroyed, and there's like
So both the club and the restaurant, the building is
the building's toast, literally. And there's I guess fire does an investigation, and then there's he expressed, so they leased it, but the province owns, there's 3 layers involved. So there's going to be a bureaucratic nightmare in terms of like cleaning it up. And then they'll have like, consultations on how to rebuild. So that won't be, rebuilt for years. And in terms of the Island Cafe, they're exploring like temporary pop-up measures so that they can have a presence on Wards Island in 2024 this summer. I did learn that Great Lakes Brewery actually made a special lager for the Island Cafe lager came from Great Lakes Brewery, and they served the Sunnyside Session IPA, and they served the Canuck Pale Ale, and these were big sellers at the Island Cafe. And it does sound like an oasis, and it's a shame that that it's burnt down, and hopefully they find temporary dwellings so that they can open up for at least on weekends in the summer. And in a few years, when they rebuild the structure better than ever, that there's a presence for the Island Cafe again, because I want to go with you.
I sincerely hope so. I mean, it's the thing about the island is that, when it's open in its tourist season there, it's a magical place, but a lot of the food options are like pizza and Subway and whatever. And that's fine. They have the concessions there and all that. But they're also like the crowded touristy version of those fast food places, right? And then there's a sit-down restaurant on the lake that's on Center Island, and that's fine. And there's another one over near Hanlan's Point Beach. But it's like when you walk around, it's kind of like in my mind, I think of it almost like amusement park food or something. Like it's like this is not, you can't really have a meal there. There's like some snack options. There's an ice cream cart. And then when you walk over to these like magical residential communities that are there, and you encounter like just across the way from the baseball diamond and the Wards Island Beach, you encounter the Island Cafe. It's just this kind of like enchanting kind of bohemian casual, but a restaurant where you can sit down and have a meal, and it's nice to have that on the island, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I hope, and so I hope good things happen for them, but I hope that sooner rather than later they're able to figure out a solution, because I think, especially for the people who live over there or the people who spend a lot of time over there, it would be a deeply felt absence. It's like your one real restaurant. I think there's another one that I haven't been to. There's another club, restaurant, sit-down-y
but
restaurant.
Is it even licensed? Because the nice thing, the Island Cafe was licensed. You could have some Ontario wine.
Oh, yeah, it's your local bar, too, if you live on Wards Island, yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's terrible news, but I did get an update on that. And again, the Between Two Fermenters is dropping next Tuesday, the 5th episode, and that full conversation is there. Somebody passed away this week, and I thought we'd just take a moment and talk about him.
Oh.
I'm Guy Lafleur. I'm Daryl Sittler. And I use a Daryl Sittler hockey stick. I use Daryl Sittler hockey stick. Cut! Take 2. I'm Guy Lafleur. I'm Daryl Sittler. And I use a Daryl Sittler hockey stick. I use a Guy Lafleur hockey stick. Hey, Guy, how about some cornerbacks, eh? All right, sure thing, Daryl. Oh, boy, I bet these are good, huh? Oh, yeah. Real malt flavor. Smells good, too. Well, I can't do these things. Cut! I'm sorry. They're right on my gums. You lose your plate, Daryl? Yeah, I lost my plate in Boston. You lost your dentures in Boston. Why don't you push it down with some milk and mush it into your puss? Right. Cornerbacks, take 3. I'm Guy Lafleur.
I'm Daryl Sittler.
And I use a Daryl Sittler hockey stick.
I use a Guy Lafleur hockey stick. Hey, Guy, how about some cornerbacks?
An excellent idea.
All right, eh?
Let's try some of this. Oh, it looks yumbo.
Sure is. Smells so good, too. See what's going on? It's got pour de sang. Some French. I don't speak French. I'm sorry.
What's your problem? Ah, look at it in English. It's on English.
What the hell? You got two languages on the poor crowd. I only speak English.
Because it's a bilingual country.
It is not bull, my friend. One language, one goddamn song. God says, we.
Take 4. Hi, I'm Guy Lafleur.
I'm Daryl Sittler.
And I use a Daryl Sittler hockey stick.
Use a Guy Lafleur hockey stick. Hey, Guy, want some cornerbacks?
Yeah, sure thing, Daryl. Hey, this stuff looks okay, huh?
Yeah, sure does.
Boy, I could try some malt flavor and everything.
And some Pepsi-Cola with it?
That's supposed to be, Daryl.
Oh, Con, that's a joke.
The joke is, big back.
So that was the late, great John Candy with Joe Flaherty, who just passed away this week. And I felt like Joe was like an honorary Canadian. He's one of those guys you find, oh, he's a Pittsburgh guy, like he's American. But growing up, it just seemed like they were all Canadian on SCTV. And a great loss. A lot of great SCTV skits and beyond from Joe.
Yeah, like just a really funny guy. I wasn't able to, and I kept peeking over at your
Well, there's no
computer, but you
video.
didn't have the video on either.
No.
But one thing I love about those old SCTV sketches, like that one, is like there's no attempt to actually impersonate the voices of the people. I mean, Joe Flaherty was doing that French Canadian accent a little bit, but it's not like John Candy was not doing a Daryl Sittler there. He's just he says the words, "I'm Daryl Sittler," and that's it. And then it's a bit of a hoser accent, but
Right.
anyhow, that was yeah. I mean, goodbye. The Beaverton had a great headline for this one, which was, in honor of Joe Flaherty's death. There's a ceremonial, like 21 TVs thrown off balcony
Right.
salute with that old, the opening sequence of people throwing their TV off their balcony that was from SCTV, which seemed like as fitting a farewell as I could imagine.
Absolutely. So Joe Flaherty gone, will be missed, and now that I'm thinking of SCTV, FOTM Dave Thomas did do a pretty good Bob Hope. So I'm thinking he did nail the Bob Hope, but you're right. Otherwise,
Dave Thomas, also not Canadian, right?
no, he's Canadian.
Oh,
He's
is he?
from
Oh, okay.
Hamilton. Although
Okay.
I told him he was from Hamilton, and then he corrected me and said, "Nope, I'm from Dundas."
Yeah. People in Dundas and Ancaster and Stony Creek get real uppity about that, especially if they were there from before, right? If they
Well,
grew
that's
up
it.
there
He's-
when they were
'cause
independent
he's in-
cities.
Right.
Now they've been amalgamated in, but yeah, I know they have that local pride.
The Americans, I can tell you, Harold Ramis was American, and Andrea Martin was American.
The only reason I admit I don't know a ton about Dave Thomas, I just thought I had heard at one point that one of the Mackenzie brothers was actually an American, but it turns out that's not the case.
That is incorrect.
Yeah.
That is incorrect. But there were Americans were walking amongst the SCTV cast, and Joe was one of them from Pittsburgh. And sorry to hear about his loss. And there's a song I loaded up for you, Ed, just as we get warmed up here, before we talk into the issues of the last quarter. Get very serious on this program.
Turn around. Every now and then
Do you want to sing it with me?
Just for me.
and you're never coming around.
Turn around.
Every now and then I get a
You know, the reason this song is so epic is it's a Jim Steinman jam, right?
Yeah,
He did
it's
Bat Out
got
of
that
Hell.
meatloaf theatrics to it.
Big time. Very dramatic.
It's like Jim Steinman is like musical theater without the musical,
Right. Yeah. Like a rock
without the
opera.
production, like the soundtrack for a rock opera. I'm just in anticipation of trying to find out why you queued this up for
You
me.
haven't figured it out yet?
I
thought
have
you were
not.
brighter than that. I thought you were bright as the sun. I thought you were as bright as the sun, Ed Keenan. The song is called... What's the name of the song?
Total Eclipse of the Heart. Oh, it's because I have these glasses. Not the ones I'm wearing, the ones at home that I'm saving up
It's
for
because
Eclipse
we
Day.
have a freaking eclipse coming on
We
Monday.
do.
Do you not
We
read the
do.
news? You don't read your newspaper?
No, yeah, the kids are going to day off school and everything.
So I wanted to ask you what are your plans for April 8th, 2024, which we're expecting a total eclipse of the sun.
Yeah, so I have my family has a whole complete suite of eclipse glasses that we have ordered in anticipation of this. I think we're going to go out and take a look at it. I'm not traveling to Niagara or anything. It's at least not the plan now. It's a work day for me. And I'm not sure exactly where I'll be in the city on that day, but I plan to take my chance to look at it. I mean, I
Okay,
grew
so you got
up.
these glasses.
I remember a partial eclipse in the 80s when I was
Me
there,
too, of
and
course. Same.
the amount of warnings we got, it was like right up there with quicksand, with like immediate threats to your life that you desperately needed
Don't
to be aware
stare
of.
at the sun.
Is like, don't even look at it. Don't even glance
I
at
remember
it. We
this
watched
too.
a movie about a guy, I think a character played by Dan Aykroyd, actually, in the movie. It's at least according to my childhood memories, who was a blind character who there's a big monologue in the movie about how he went blind by staring at a solar eclipse. It was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen in his life, but it was the last thing he ever saw, which I don't even know if that's how it happens. Like, I don't know if you instantly lose your sight, but I don't
want
want to find out. No. I have recently, another thing I've been advising my children of is that, like, on my social media, there's been a lot of, like, sponsored editorial posts from, like, I don't know, Scientific America or wherever, but like really advising you to not take pictures of it with your phone camera unless you've got a special lens filter, because it will
interesting.
burn out your camera lenses the same way it will burn out your eyes, which I would not have thought of.
Yeah, you'd think that would be safe. Like, okay, I'm not going to,
Apparently professional photographers too, they need a special kind of like filter that goes over the lens because the intensity of the rays
What did
from
you
the
think
sun.
of the decision to move the PD day to April 8th just to ensure,
I don't
out of an abundance of caution?
There's a lot of people that I've come in contact with who are like, it seems to me, disproportionately angry about that. Like they're so disgusted with the school board for doing it.
But it's not like they made a new
but-
PD day. They just
Yeah.
moved one.
But it's sort of like part of me thinks, you know how there used to be a statutory holiday, or there was a movement. They used to give kids Remembrance Day off so that they could attend Remembrance Day ceremonies with their parents.
Okay.
And then the reason they stopped doing that, like in my childhood or just before, because adults were talking about it a lot when I was a kid.
Right.
Which is what I remember. I don't ever remember, actually. I don't think I ever had that day off school.
No, well, we're
But
the same
the
vintage.
reason
I didn't
we
have it
didn't
off.
have it off school was because they realized kids would be going and playing pinball games all day or whatever. They treat it like a long weekend or just a day off. And they thought, oh, it's better if people are at work or at school. They can learn about it. They can talk about it. They can have an actual observance of it. And in the same way, I almost feel like if kids were in school that day, the teachers could be hyping them up on, like, don't look at it, whatever you do. Like, you could base your
Right.
educational curriculum around both what's happening and the dangers it poses, and potentially you could have the schools hand out to everybody a pair of eclipse glasses they could wear on the way
now
home,
you're thinking
or something
big.
like that.
Yeah.
But instead, I mean, I guess they're just worried that, from what I understand, the kids are going to be walking home right as the eclipse is happening or the
Right.
danger zone is starting.
Right.
And the fear was that it's just too much of a chance that these kindergartners
Well,
wandering home or whatever will be, or no matter what you tell them, right? It's just like, don't think of a pink elephant.
Well, you know, you're making a good point there. Like, I've been so warned not to stare at this thing. I think I'm going to stare at it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I
Like,
think
what's the worst that could happen?
I'm so curious about, like, yeah, what happens? Like, do I, like, at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark when Bellic or whatever, his face starts melting or whatever? Like, I'm so, it's like when someone tells you not to do something, it's like, I think I'm going to do that.
Or can you imagine, like, some bully holding a kid's head up, like, open your eyes, punk, open. Yeah.
Or like a prank would be like to trick somebody be into looking or like, oh my god, is that plane crashing or whatever? Like,
I mean, the reason people get so upset about these days off school, there's a lot of talk about like, oh, these, we treat our kids like fragile snowflakes and all of that. It seems to me like a lot of the complaining is wound up in that, from what I can tell from my social media circles and stuff.
Right.
But I mean, the big inconvenience to parents whenever their kids have a day off school is you got to figure out your childcare. You got to take a day off work or work from home or,
but they just moved
hire
an
a
existing
babysitter or whatever.
day. Like,
but yeah, it was going to have to be. It was going to be a Friday at some point or whatever. Anyway.
See, I think
Now
it's a
gonna be
no-brainer to
Monday.
just move it to the Monday, and at least then it just. I guess it's a liability thing. Like, now the school board doesn't have to. Like, it's not our fucking problem.
But then the
Come on,
teachers'
parents.
unions were arguing that they should also, for their own safety, the teachers should have the day off. Because, of course, on these PEA days or PD days or whatever they are,
see, I
the teachers
changed it to
actually
PD.
have to attend
Right.
school and do their professional development activities. And so the teachers' unions were arguing that it's a workplace safety issue, that they should also get the day off. And I thought, good try. Like full marks.
Half day off
full
for the
marks. I had as my teachers used to say, like, valid attempt, but you still get 0 marks on that one.
Now I'm curious. Okay, so this is on the 8th. What time is it at? Is it 3 something, right? Do you know offhand? Okay, well, we'll dig that up.
not.
I'm just going to look at my calendar. Where will I be? I will be wrapping up a conversation with the great Biff Naked.
Oh,
Maybe-
and then the two of you can go and
I
experience.
got to get glass. Yeah, let's go.
Have you got the glasses?
No, because I
How
don't
have you
know.
left it this long?
I know.
You had Jim Steinman write you a whole song so you wouldn't forget.
Jim Steinman, the late great Jim Steinman. Shout out to Ridley Funeral Home. By the way, there's a measuring tape for you. Did I give it to you? Do you have
I got it.
Oh, you got it
here.
already.
It's,
Okay.
Do
you get one every time?
Mentioned Jim Flaherty dying.
Joe
Joe
Flaherty. Yeah,
sorry,
well, Jim Flaherty
Jim
also
Steinman.
died,
I immediately, reflexively picked up my tape measure. The thing is, I actually have 2 of these, but I'll tell you, I am
You can never have
happy
enough.
to receive another one because I find these little tape measures. This has nothing to do with Ridley Funeral Home. I know they are sponsoring them,
Sure.
but I actually have found like they're so useful around the house. Like
Yep.
I got one in my bedside table. I got one in my kitchen drawer. I got one in
Right.
my living room. I got one, and it's like whenever like Rebecca's like, "Can you measure the mirror there and tell
You
me
go,
the
"I have a Ridley
dimensions?" And
Funeral
it's like,
Home
"Wait a
measuring
second,
tape."
I got one of these." And of course, I have like the full-on handyman construction measuring tapes. But now,
Right.
I live in a house with a garage, and they're in my toolbox in the garage,
Right.
and I don't have to go out there because I
See,
got this little
handy.
retractable mini guy.
And every quarter, for those who don't know, Ed Keenan visits every quarter. It's a recurring event in our calendars. I did move it an hour today for Great Lakes Brewery.
We had more pre-podcast conversation than
And I
usual
regret
because
it.
of the
It's-
rescheduling.
And I feel like it took the wind out of my sails. Like, I had my Keenan chat. By the way, my guest yesterday was a Keegan, and I'm mildly amused that there was a Keegan and now there's a Keenan.
Yeah, no relation that I know of.
Well,
but
that would
you
be
know,
wild because
possibly.
his first name is Keegan and your last name is spelled differently. It's Keenan. Imagine you were fucking related.
different names.
That's wild.
and one not even a family name. Which Keegan was that you had on, Mike?
Keegan Matheson,
Ah.
who came over with your colleague, and it is interesting to me that in 2024, like, you can work and write at this, like, for the same paper with somebody and maybe never encounter them. Like how often have you met Gregor Chisholm, who covers the Toronto Blue Jays? He writes a column about the Blue Jays. Like, would you ever? Like, would there be a Christmas
we
party
don't
or
really
something?
interact. Yeah, things like Christmas parties, staff meetings would be the places where we would meet, and I may have. And Gregor, if
He's tall.
if we've had long, heartfelt conversations, forgive me, but I don't like. I may have met him in passing at some point, shaking hands. And most of the sports team I've met here and there.
Like Kevin McGran.
Yeah, and we've done podcasts together at the Star. Some of those guys.
Oh, Mark Zwolinski, he retired?
Zelensky retired
Because he's coming over here for his exit interview.
Oh, great! I tried to have him. He was one of the driving forces for like a year-long research project where they did like the whole sports team, or at least, most of the sports team, multiple members of the sports team contributed. It was a giant, like the best, who wore it best. every number from 00 to 99, which is the iconic person to wear the number, which with numbers like 27 worn by
Sittler.
Frank Mahovlich, Daryl Sittler, and Vladdy Guerrero Jr., there's like some legit debate.
Yeah.
And it depends, like across sports too, right?
Right.
Number 7, no, like there was a bunch of them where it's like,
Well, that's got to be
Is this-
Damaso Garcia, right? Greg Tarian.
So he had retired like a week before, and we were going to do a podcast about it. And then, my producer at the Star Podcast reached out to him and was like, everybody's saying you're going to really want to be on this, even though you're retired. You're going to want to come and talk about it because it was such a passion project for you. And he was like, no way. Like, not a chance. I am out of here. I am done. That's what retirement means. So Congratulations to him on his retirement.
And more about this when he visits shortly for his exit interview. I got hard-hitting questions here. Okay, I'm not done with the eclipse yet. Okay, it was more than just Jim Steinman. By the way, where's Bonnie Tyler from? You get one guess, and we'll see if you nail it. This is like trivia time. Bonnie Tyler, who sings Total Eclipse of the Heart.
Wales.
Yeah, you know what? You fucking nailed it. How'd you know that?
I must have heard it at some point, but I didn't actually know it for sure. But when you
That's
asked me about
amazing.
weird places, the first thing I thought of was New Zealand. And I was thinking English-speaking exotic places.
Right.
And then I thought, that video is so weird and theatrical and like Englishy, and it's like it just had a Welsh vibe to me. So.
That's amazing, Ed.
I must have heard it at some point and didn't know I knew it. But
it was in there somewhere, and you dug it out. And I wasn't gonna fix it in post like I did the first time you visited. Okay, so this is interesting to me that there's a state of emergency in Niagara Falls because they're expecting 1 million people or something. I know this, here we are in Toronto. They have the better view, I guess. I'm trying to, we're 99 point something %, but we're not, I don't know, you get
there's going to be a small sliver of sun still visible in Toronto, whereas you get the complete blackout and then the aura effect that comes with it, I think, in Niagara Falls. Because they're right directly in the path of the eclipse.
And do we have any weather reports yet? I know it's early, but I can see like 1 million people spending a fortune to see this thing, and it's a cloudy frickin' day, and nobody sees a damn thing. So
the vague is cloudy and between 3 and 12 degrees. That's what I got on my app.
But like Mike Wilner from the Toronto Star says, it's early.
There is some chance of precipitation. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that'd be really something if it was like completely grayed out. Although I guess it would still get dark on the other side of the clouds. We just wouldn't be able to see the source of that darkness.
Yeah, but if a tree falls in the forest and no one's to hear it, did it make a sound? Andrew Ward is a big fan of the Ed Keenan episodes of Toronto Mic'd. I think he likes other episodes of Toronto Mic'd as well, but he really likes the Ed Keenan episodes. And he says, we need some Randy Macho Man Savage shout-outs.
Oh, yeah!
He says they're the best. Like this, I'm reading this verbatim. They're the best.
I don't know if it's because I come on here and talk about it and my phone is spying on me, but like Facebook, which I hate now because of its attempts to destroy the Canadian media
can't
industry.
link to a Toronto Star article.
But I still, my Facebook, like how like 2/3 of your feed is not people you are friends with. It's just like weirdo content. I
get like Seinfeld
so I get
stuff
now a
and
tremendous
Soprano
amount of like classic wrestling groups posting my thing. I'm not a member of any. As far as I know, I've never sought out any of these articles.
Where do you think it
but
comes
they're all
from?
about like how when Macho Man Randy Savage won the belt and him and Miss Elizabeth were celebrating and Hulk Hogan was in the ring celebrating with them. It was like Hulk Hogan was disrespecting them and it was like stealing their thunder, the big red and yellow elephant in the room. And then all these people are debating about it. And I keep getting sucked into reading the stories. Like
how can you resist? I need to know. You need to link me to that right away.
Like all 80s wrestling advertorial. But it's actually just fans like saying like, okay, remember that time, but then let's come up with a divisive question we can debate about that match or
That's
that
wild.
whatever. So
Maybe it is because you do
and it's
the
all because
impression.
of the Randy Macho Man Savage.
I thought you were going to tell me you were getting ads on Facebook for Slim Jim or something because they figured you're in that demo there. Now, we will later if we have time. And again, I pressed the timer. We're going to do a 2-hour episode. We're going to see if we can nail the 2-hour mark. That would be quite impressive. But I can tell you that Randy Macho Man Savage, whose name is Randy Poffo, was a prospect. Like, he was a baseball prospect.
Wow.
I believe he was drafted. He was a high touted, I don't know how highly touted, I don't want to exaggerate this, but he was definitely a prospect to play in Major League Baseball.
Well, there you go.
So there you go. Okay.
Well, I mean, I guess he's a professional athlete, entertainer. Oh yeah, sports entertainer.
Now it's time to begin the episode.
I would have loved it if it was like Miss Elizabeth was the manager of his baseball team. Because he brings her with. Yeah.
What's the what was the movie about the Cleveland Indians? They were trying to tank the team.
Major League.
Yeah. How did I not remember? It's called freaking Major League. But the owner looked a bit like Miss Elizabeth. Like, picture in your head right now. Remember? They had that. Remember, they had the cutout of her or whatever, and they were when they were trying to make the pennant there. Okay, so there you go, Major League. I want to hear from you, Ed, about the Black Bull Tavern closing after nearly 200 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like a iconic Queen Street place, right? And it was, if you had asked me, I wouldn't have necessarily known off the top of my head that it had been there 200 years. I would have just known it had been there as long as I could remember. And certainly in our lifetimes, our Toronto lifetimes, the Black Bull patio was a defining feature of Queen Street West in the summertime. The sort of the anchor patio of that whole strip. You've got like in the
you can burp into my microphone.
Queen Street through the ages of our life, right? You've got like the Horseshoe is like the live music rock and roll headquarters. The Cameron House is like such a like both the artists who live upstairs, but also like the video cabaret, the front room, like big band music or swing music that and country that's played throughout the years. There are like places on Queen Street. Even Peter Pan, the restaurant, is like not going to ever be on the list of the 10 best restaurants in the city, but is like a defining the Queen Mum, right? Like from the 80s all the way through to now, or certainly all my life, the Bovine Sex Club for like punk scene, right? Or the Black Bull patio is just that spot for the whole strip, right? Like the outdoor patio there, they're just giant. And I remember like when I worked there and when I spent a lot of time there, just the sound of the motorcycle pipes, because there's so many bikers that would drink there and they would have their pipes modified to, as they do. And that obnoxious, loud, rattling, roaring sound. I worked at Taro Grill, which I think La Palette is in the same space now. Taro Grill at Queen, just west of Bathurst. Of Bathurst, just east of Bathurst, west of Spadina. And while we were working, just like the windows would rattle and the floor would shake and just car alarms all down the street would be going off. And it was, then you'd go and you'd see 24 bikes, Harleys all lined up outside the Black Bull. And yet it was like not a biker bar, right? It was owned by since the late 70s, it was owned by a former CFL and professional hockey icon, like one of the toughest guys. And so there would be all these...
Which is, don't bury that lead, though. Like a professional hockey player and CFL player.
So like he was not an NHL player, but he played in the East Coast and West Coast professional hockey leagues and the AHL for a while. As a professional hockey player, one of his big claims to fame, he was like an enforcer. He was a fighter, a tough guy. But he got into a fight that devolved into stick swinging with John Brophy, future Toronto Maple Leafs NHL coach John Brophy, and gave him 30 stitches across his forehead.
It's like slapshot stuff.
Another professional fighter. I'm getting this from I got this from a obituary of of him that ran in the Globe and Mail when he died last year. But it was another professional hockey player who played with him, has said that was the most violent hockey fight he had ever seen. That was the worst thing he'd ever seen. As a CFL football player, he was once kicked off of his team for punching his own quarterback in the face. He was famous as a tough guy on the football field as well.
Right.
So anyway, he bought this bar, and all these retired CFL players would come wearing their various jerseys and watch CFL football every Sunday, like all day, and they would all sit around talking about it. And then from the 70s all through the 80s, because the Ontario College of Art was there, and then because Queen West became the center of the sort of like the punk and new wave music scenes, the comedy scene, like all these different demographics would drink together at the Black Bull, and all these bankers would come over from the financial district. And so it was the kind of place, and I admit I didn't spend a lot of time there, but I knew people who had really fond memories of it. I read up on it. I looked into it when I found out it was closing. And it's just like the beer never really got expensive there. They never really served a lot of fancy drinks. It was like a beer or shots kind of place. And a kind of place where people would get into shouting matches and all of that, but then buy each other shots afterwards. But you could be watching a CFL football game, or you could be talking about like avant-garde music, or you could be making bets against the bankers, right? Like, and it's like they're all lined up there together. And the interesting thing to me when I was thinking about how like this is a signal, as the granddaughter of the owner, after he died, the family basically just decided, you know, Queen West has changed, things have changed, he's gone now, it's time to just shut it down. And part of what they said is like, you know, we used to have one of the sunniest patios in the city. Mm-hmm. Now it's in the shadow of condo towers. And, you know, we used to have bikers and bankers and you know, artists. And now we have a lot of people who live in the condos, and we've appreciated their business as well. But Queen West is changing and things are changing. And I'm thinking, so I have, and the people I know in my circles have like multiple decades of memories of the Black Bull. And yet, it was there before there was a Queen Street West. It was there before there was a Toronto, right? 1833 it opened. That was then called Lot Street. It was on the far western fringe of the boundaries of muddy York, or the city of York as it was then. And it was, they had a trough out front, and there were like farmers markets. Farmers would travel into the city, and at the edge of the city, the western edge of the city, there would be marketplaces where they would auction off their pigs or their produce or whatever.
Right. And
so they would stop at the Black Bull and have a few pints and stuff, right? That's how long it has been there. In the conversation with the Wheat Chief, there's some debates about like continuously operating and all of that. So like for the oldest bar in the city.
Wow.
And so, you know, the owner's granddaughter in her post said like, it's the end of an era, but it's like the end of a whole series of eras. Like that bar, not that there's anybody passing down the oral history from bartender to bartender. Like I think there's been some wholesale changes of management over the years. It went by a different name for much of the 20th century, like from the, I can't remember off the top of my head, but from like the early 1900s until the 1970s, it had a Clifton House or something like that. And it was a very famously rough place. And I think for stretches of the 1900s, that was a rough part of town as well. You know, often like Jamie Bradburn is a history journalist, a Toronto history journalist who used to write for Torontoist. He's done columns and stuff for the Toronto Star. He did a history of the Black Bull where he, like all the clippings from those years are all just police blotter items about like fights there and all of that. But yeah, so it's just like I can't claim that like if Sneaky D's closes, I will have a lot of personal stories because I misspent a lot of my youth at Sneaky D's, right? And you know there are a bunch of other places like that where like,
but that's already relocated,
personal
right? Like
thing,
right.
Where the personal stuff for me is overwhelming. But I just think I wrote a column about the closing of the Black Bull, not because I ever was a regular there, but just because it's like how many places in the city have seen as much history as that place and have defined the neighborhood they're in to the extent that they did. And and then it just passed away. And it was supposed to be, my plan, finally, had been to go. They announced that Wednesday night, April 3rd, was going to be their last night. And so my plan was to go and see the last call and write a column about that.
Right.
And, presumably there'd be some people there, pouring one out, drinking one down, to say goodbye. People who'd been there for years, people who, hadn't been there for years but used to be there. And I get to talk to those people or at least see them. I've heard John Tory used to go in quite a bit, possibly because of his CFL connections. I don't know.
One beer, Tory.
But then they ran out of beer on Monday night. They ran out of booze. They sold right out.
Right.
So when people heard it was closing, here in late March, it was all late March then, filled that patio, filled the bar, drank them completely dry. So they just shut up. Two
they're
days
not gonna
early.
order
So
more beer?
the announced farewell was no, sorry, we're out.
So what does this mean for the Queen Street scene? I know you write about this in the Toronto Star, but is this the last nail in the coffin?
I don't know what it means. I mean, the thing is somebody put a headline on it that said that it means something.
Death of Queen Street scene.
Part of me thinks that Queen Street has always been dying. I worked at Terrell Grill in the 1990s, and all the musicians and artists and whatnot who would come sit at the bar. It was like a casual fine dining sit-down restaurant with a big raucous bar in the front. And that bar was right across from the kitchen where I would work, right? And it was an open kitchen. So you would sit and talk to these guys and get to know them. But they all thought, it's not been the same since the Squeeze Club closed, right? It's not been the same since Le Chateau opened and, ruined the whole credibility. All these corporate fast fashion places. So in the 90s, people were already complaining that Queen Street wasn't what it used to be. And then presumably in the 80s, they did the same thing. And I mean, what I wonder about, though, too, is that, so it has changed a lot. It's going to continue to change. I don't know that it occupies, at a certain point, the nightlife first moved down to Clubland, but Queen Street was still there adjacent to it.
Right.
And then the nightlife kind of moved west to Queen West, near the Gladstone and the Drake hotels and that whole strip. And then up Ossington a bit and all of that. And then, but I just don't know. So I don't think Queen West for a while has played the central role in the city's scene-stir life, music scene, art scene, that it did in the 70s and 80s and 90s for quite a while. But I don't know what place plays that role now, if there is any place. And, I mean, there's still quite a lot of the old Queen Street charm is still there. And quite a lot of the old places are still there. The Cavern's still there. The Horseshoe's still there. I don't know that this marks the death of anything in particular on the scene, but it certainly is one of those changes that will be noticeable by its absence. Where's the patio now?
Well, it marks the death of the Black Bull Tavern.
For sure.
Without a doubt. 298 Queen Street West. That's right by a very famous address, 299 Queen Street West. So, it's 1833 is when that first opened. Hey, I need a quick up. I have a question from Heyref. I'm going to read verbatim in a moment. But last time you were over, you were explaining to me what Sankofa means, okay? Because the Young Dundas Square was going to be Sankofa Square. But then I feel like I read something maybe that's not as positive as it was when we were chatting about it. And maybe, is there an update on the Sankofa Square name? Any update?
I have not given it a moment's thought since the last time you and I talked about it. So my understanding, and if the question you're about to read me is from
this question's unrelated to Sankofa Square.
So here was my understanding, that it comes from a word in an African language that means, I explained it to you last time. It's something to do with understanding and reinterpreting.
It sounded all good
history.
what you said to me last time.
The objections to it that I had heard, which seemed faux woke because of where they were coming from. The people making these objections were all right-wing cultural warriors, but was that the people who spoke that language that this word comes from were slave traders, or like had sold fellow Africans into slavery. And so that was my understanding of the controversialness of it. But I mean, the information I got, and like I don't pretend to be any authority on this at all. But not only that, I don't know necessarily who the authorities on these things should be.
Right.
But the reading about it that I was hearing about where the history of this word came from and what it means were like people who are like African American studies professors, and in their field of study, this term has come to occupy a certain place that seemed appropriate for if you wanted to commemorate this troublesome history and acknowledge Black Canadians. But there may be further dimensions to it than that I'm unaware of. I don't know.
Okay. Well, you're back in another quarter here, so in a few months, you'll see if there's a
if it comes back up at City Hall or something, I will become acutely aware of it again.
Hey Ref, who's a good listener, and I think is on the live stream right now. So hello to Hey Ref at live.torontomike.com. Please ask Ed Keenan his opinion on the way the city has, this is Hey Ref's word, okay, has fucked up, my goodness, we're working blue here today, has fucked up the vacancy tax. I think the tax is stupid. I happen to know, I have some inside information that Hey Ref is by day is an accountant and by night is a referee, a hockey referee. But
well, I don't know if this is
let me finish it here real quick and then we can hear from you. But I think the tax is stupid. But even worse is the messaging or lack thereof that has come from the city in terms of making compliance easy on this. What do you think of what Hey Ref is saying about the vacancy tax?
All right. Well, first of all, if I understand the people who've received media training that I talk to or whatever, I'm supposed to, Hey Ref, thank you so much for the question. I appreciate it. Very great question.
Great question, Hey Ref.
But okay, so I don't think the concept of vacancy tax is stupid. I think actually in the midst of a housing crisis, if you are leaving land vacant, you should have to pay for that, right? There should be some incentive for people who have a house that is sitting empty to either sell it to somebody who will use it or to rent it out to somebody themselves or otherwise put it to use, right? There used to be, and there are property taxes for like vacant commercial buildings that operate the same way, where it used to be that you could save money by basically leaving it vacant and waiting for the rents to go up. And so they try to create incentives because it ruins a commercial strip when a property sits vacant. In the same way, empty houses in the city, the people are just trying to appreciate that's not helping when we have a shortage of places for people to live. I have started hearing from a lot of people that, okay, first of all, the method of determining that a house is vacant is that every property owner in the city has to affirmatively tell the city, my house is not vacant.
Right.
And so I think, first of all, that's kind of a problem. That's a difficulty. And especially given the difficulty the city has in clearly communicating these kinds of things to people. So I've started to hear recently, and no doubt Hey Ref, an accountant, has heard from a lot of clients and whatnot. I've been hearing from just general people saying, we returned from our 3-month sojourn overseas to receive this tax assessment that says our house is vacant. We didn't even know we were supposed to tell them we live there. We live there. That's all we, and the city would say, we have bought advertising in all the major media. We have put advertising on social media. We have sent repeated letters to everybody's house. We have put a notice in your water bill. We put a notice on your property tax bill. We told you this deadline was coming. We extended the deadline twice. We kept making announcements at City Hall for any press that would listen and saying, look, we're extending the deadline one more time, but it's going to be next Friday. You got to tell us by next Friday if you live in your house or not. And at the same time, like, many people in this city are just absolutely oblivious to that kind of stuff. That information does not permeate. And so There's going to be a lot of people in a state of shock right now. I hope there's an easy appeals process that helps them overturn that. It does seem like maybe measuring like water usage or utilities or something like that would have been an easier way to, or, used to be when there was an election coming, enumerators would come door to door, literally knock on every door. They used to do this for the census too, right? Literally knock on every door, talk to the people who are there, come back a second time, leave notices there. It seems like if you're going to have something where every home in the city needs to be on the list of either occupied or unoccupied, that there could have been a way to deal with that better. I mean, I imagine this is a permanent thing. So I imagine that once you've got this master list, it should be that every year when you pay your water, maybe you can't pay your property tax bill unless you tick the box, this house is currently occupied or this house is currently occupied, right? Or maybe like when you pay your water tax every year, right? Like there must be some mandatory communication people are already doing with the city where they could add this on to make sure that everybody has the chance. Because it does seem like a lot of people are being blindsided by a vacant home bill for a home they live in.
Now, I have also heard anecdotally from people or people's parents and stuff who missed all the messaging on this one, and I think that's what Hayref is referring to. But I will say, personally, as a homeowner in the city of Toronto, I sure didn't miss it. Like I maybe I'm more dialed in than your average bear, but it did seem. I think I got something in the mail. I think I heard about it on the radio. I think it was in the atmosphere. I feel like through osmosis, I soaked it in. Like I was well aware of the vacancy tax deadline for what that's worth, but I do hear from people who missed it completely.
The thing is, I think like you certainly are more dialed in than the average bear, and so am I. Like,
my job.
I cover
man.
some of this stuff for a living, but you also like are constantly talking about stuff to people, and it's not always about politics.
And I have you over
but it's
once
like
a quarter
city
to tell
stuff.
me.
You are named after the city.
That's true. I am
or at
Toronto
least your
Mike.
Podcast is
That's true.
And I just think here's what happens though is that like I think a lot of these homeowners. Like, I get so much in the mail from the city that's like, oh, here's your recycling schedule. And then I'm always like, oh, I'm going to put this calendar on my fridge. And then I realize it's not even a calendar. It's just like telling me in some neighborhoods of the city on alternate days and blah, blah, blah. And then it's like what goes in your recycle bin and what goes in your compost. And it's like, I just throw that stuff out. And then there's like filming location notices and there's like construction updates and like some newsletter from my city councilor and whatever else.
Right.
And then I think like too, like on the newscast or whatever, there's like vacant home tax and people are like immediately like, I don't own a vacant home. This doesn't apply to me. And they stop listening immediately. Right.
Right.
And so I have some sympathy. I mean, I also, this is tied in. Have you and I talked about the Centennial Park batting cages on here before?
No, but it's on my list of things I want to talk about.
I've written it a few times. So let me just, I won't get into the batting cages, except to say that when they finally announced they were closing and the people who owned the place were saying, please try and help us save it. Last minute appeal to the city to renew our lease rather than forcing us to shut down, right? Lots of people in the neighborhood use those batting cages all the time, but also visit that park, play at the arena that's in the park, like live in the neighborhood. We're all like, how come there was no notice about this? Why is this the first time ever hearing about this? Right. And then the city will point out like, we did 5 years of consultations and we came back and held public meetings all these times. We had an online consultation and like, this is what the community told us they want. More baseball diamonds, not more batting cages or whatever. Right. And it's like, while that was happening, I went to the park next to George Bell Arena, which through my life, I have, I continue to have children who play hockey at George Bell Arena. I occasionally play men's league there. I have coached a lot of baseball on the little T-Ball diamond or T-Ball.
Is that called Runnymede Park?
Runnymede Park, yeah. And so while this was all happening, I could see there were big signs in Runnymede Park that said like, changes are proposed for this park. Tell us what you want. And I had missed the point. But it's like, I'm in that location multiple times a day. I'm very invested in that space.
Yep.
And yet, I had never noticed those signs, and I scanned over them as if it's like there's a development application here, blah, 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 blah. It's like it would never occur to me as a very engaged person who actually cares about that space that I should look into this city consultation process and tell them what I want for the park. It's like,
Right.
It's like, now, if they announced they were paving the whole entire park to, I don't know, make it a
Like to
gambling den. Like, like we're going to remove the little T-ball diamond in the
Right.
soccer field, and we're going to put a pit of snakes, a pit of deadly vipers here. Then I would say, why didn't anybody ask me what I wanted? How is this just coming out now? And it's like, oh, because the pit of snakes people are the only people who showed up to the
Right.
consultation.
Right.
So I feel like there's something similar at work in these, like, how come I was never told about the vacant home tax? It's like, well, people were trying to tell you, but somehow it was not made clear to you
Right.
that this actually applied to you.
Right.
And
gets lost in the
especially
noise.
applies to you if you do not have a vacant home. That's like,
Right.
maybe there's a naming problem.
Right.
Maybe it should be
not
the
vacancy
occupied
tax.
home discount. You get a discount on your
Right.
property tax if you occupy your own home
see,
or rent it to someone.
You should be in the marketing there for the city. Now, the Centennial Park batting cages, what's going on there exactly? We did talk, I think last time you were on, we talked about Rob Ford Stadium, which is in the same
So Rob Ford
area.
Stadium, I think there's no more to be said.
No, I just wanted to tie it all
But,
together. But geographically, because I am an
So,
Etobicoke guy, I know where we're
For
going.
years, Centennial Park, if you don't live in Etobicoke and if you haven't been there a lot, is a giant park in the very north, the far west corner of the city.
Yeah, it goes
right?
to like Eglinton.
Yeah. It goes to, it's not the very north, but it's the extreme west, right? Like you
Yeah.
drive a block past it and you're in Mississauga.
Yeah.
And so it's an epic size of park. In the middle of the park, there's a hockey arena. There's Rob Ford Stadium there. There's a giant swimming, Etobicoke Olympium swimming and gymnastics complex. There are multiple different parts of that park. And they've been talking, and so for a long time, there have been near the golf course and near the mini golf course, across the road from those inside the park, there has been both a go-kart track and a bunch of coin-operated or token-operated batting cages. And so if people have ever played baseball or as a kid you did this stuff, it's like there used to be a lot of warehouses in the city and some outdoor places you could go to where you just walk up and you feed coins into a machine and it gives you 10 pitches for $2 or whatever, right?
Right.
And you stand there with your bat and you take swings. And you can go to the one that pitches, 80 miles per hour, or the one that pitches 50 miles per hour. There's a slow pitch one. There are no more places like that in the city now at all. There was one left. It was at Centennial Park. It was outdoors, surrounded by netting, but the Diamond Beach batting cages were the last place inside the city limits where you could go up without an appointment, just with your kid.
Right.
And, you get $10 in tokens and you feed them in there and you can take, 20, 30, 40 swings. If you still want more, you buy a few more tokens. It's whatever. You're just passing an hour or you're training. What there are a lot of indoor professionalized baseball facilities where you can rent a batting cage with a machine for $100 an hour or $150 an hour or $200 an hour, depending on the time of day and whatnot. Or you can buy a membership for your kid or whatever to go train there certain number of times a week under professional supervision, or you can take clinics and classes, or if you're a team, you can rent the facility for a certain number of hours and stuff. There are a bunch of places like that in the GTA, but there's not any coin-operated batting cages. So the city decided that as part of its expanded baseball facility at Centennial Park, they're eliminating, they evicted the go-kart track, and that's just gone, and there's no real movement to save it. Sadly enough, it was a fun go-kart track, but you can go in the suburbs of Toronto and drive go-karts, right? Like, it's not but there were a lot of people, especially in the West End of Toronto, but I even talked to some like select baseball player, friend, parents from the East End, like who live near like Greenwood, who would like drive to Centennial Park specifically because it's the only place where you're like, it's Saturday afternoon. Let's go, kid.
I used to frequent these batting cages myself.
Yeah,
as a,
and like
slow pitch.
Your kid could take a few swings, and then you can get in there and take a few swings. Yeah. It's fine. It's not like like my brother and I. At one point, he called me and he was like, "What are you doing?" I was thinking we should go to the batting cages for an hour, so we just went and we caught up and like took swings together. Right, like it's like the most casual kind of thing, and it just such an asset, I think, to the city to have that kind of space where it's like not planned, because the city was what they heard in their consultation, and probably if they're talking about expanded baseball facilities and stuff, they're talking to the organized baseball leagues and teams and whatnot to ask them, what do you need out of city parks? And they are saying, we need more regulation diamonds, right? Because they're like, you can't get a permit on all these regulation diamonds, and we need them to be well maintained, and we need them to be up to the standards. So they're like, good, we're going to do that. And that's true that we do need more of that. And the city also needs more cricket pitches. The city also needs more regulation soccer fields, right? But the problem right now with city parkland when it comes to facilities like baseball diamonds and stuff is that it's all permitted like out the wazoo, right? Which means like the parks, like there's one at Ravenna Park, there's one at High Park, there's one at all over the city. You can see there's little batting enclosures in the parks next to the baseball diamond. But if you ever go there, you'll find there's padlocked and like there's a fence around them and they're padlocked,
right?
Because, you know, High Park Little League or Royal York Baseball or Toronto Greenwood Baseball or whatever park has the permits on that diamond has the exclusive right to use that, right? So we've got all these, the public facilities that we do have, and we should have more of them, but they're also like reserved for the exclusive use of these organizations. Now, those are nonprofit community groups. I'm not accusing them of anything untoward, right? But it also just means like a neighborhood kid has to like get involved in the institution of the sport in order to use city parks facilities to just do it. You can't just go with your buddy. And that's one thing I noticed when I lived in the Washington, D.C. area, is that they're really high-end, high school baseball sports facilities. Their batting enclosures were, when they're not in use, they just have mesh nets around them. And they don't have like automatic pitching machines built into them or anything like that. Like you can go throw batting practice to your kid there. And then if the high school team or somebody else who has a permit shows up, they kick you out, right?
Right.
But it's open for public use the rest of the time. It's not locked up. It's like we just don't even have that in Toronto in a lot of cases. In some of the nicer public parks, the actual baseball diamonds themselves are locked when they're not in use so that the public can't just go and play a casual pickup game when they're not being used. And that now there's reasons for that. It's because like High Park Little League, for instance, which I have a history of being involved with, but I no longer have any kids of that age. But I know they fundraise and spend like tens of thousands of dollars on a like clay infield there to maintain the grass, to like put the scoreboard in the outfield, to like they have, the community group has invested in that facility. And if people go after it's rained and run on that mud, they just completely wreck it, right? And it like, you know, so I understand why, but it also just means like I'm philosophically opposed to having like more and more of our parkland be reserved for the exclusive use of fee-paying members.
Right.
And this seems like part of that. But I'm also, to circle back around, I'm such a like rambler. To circle back around to your initial question is just that I think that places like, things like this was not a free use. You had to do the coin op, but it was so casual and it was such a useful little thing and a fun thing for people. Like, so if you're a baseball player who wants to train, it's a useful facility to have. If you're a couple neighborhood kids who want to kill an hour, it's a fun thing to have, right? Sure. And it doesn't take up that much space in the context of the size of Centennial Park. Like, surely there's a way to incorporate it in. So Councillor Stephen Holiday, who I so rarely find myself on the same side of an issue with, and so rarely find occasion to applaud. Like, and don't get me wrong, like, I actually think he's one of the more principled city councilors in terms of, like, you know what he stands for. He's clear about it. He's able to articulate it. It's consistent. We just disagree on a lot, right? But in this case, he came back to say, okay, can we at least have a study here? Can we at least get a staff to look into how hard would it be to add something like this back into the new plan, right? Like, can we find vendors who will bid on this, who will run it as a revenue source for the city, like the old Diamond Beach was, and that it will somehow fit in. And so I don't know that there's high hopes that that's going to come back with like a positive resolution. Those batting cages are gone. At a minimum, they're not coming back in the next few years while all these renovations and rebuilding are taking place. But maybe in the longer term, there's something like that could come back.
Speaking of coming back, Hey Ref on the live stream, just back to the vacancy tax. He says the cost of administration will be more than the tax collected. So I wanted to get that here on the record.
Well, that's self-defeating if that turns out to be the case, for sure.
Oh, and Jesse Hirsch, FOTM Jesse Hirsch, says he loves that when you do your Randy Macho Man, Randy Savage impression, he says he's watching, he says, you flex.
Yes,
and I noticed
absolutely.
That too. You can't you got to flex.
Well, it's just, oh yeah. It's I don't think even the Macho Man himself could really channel that voice without. It's a physical
cup of coffee.
It goes beyond the vocal cords. It starts in the biceps and like squeezes in through your chest, and that's how it comes out. I don't actually think I do very good Macho Man impression, but it is.
But it's pretty
certainly
good. Andrew Ward,
as I remembered and honed it in my childhood.
I appreciate it very much. He was the Intercontinental Heavyweight Champion, as I recall.
Intercontinental.
Was it? He beat the Honky Tonk Man, if I recall. I'm trying to remember now. It's all coming back to me.
Do you remember?
Yeah.
When the Macho Man, Randy Savage, pulled a foreign object,
of course,
out of his shorts.
Of course, I remember that. That was a huge
Ricky
moment.
The Steamboat.
Ricky the Dragon, yeah.
Yeah, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
I still remember the foreign object and it was 100%.
like a weight or something, right? I don't know how that he was hiding that in his shorts.
It was like rolled up in his shorts or something.
Like in his
huge.
I mean,
he's huge.
Is that a foreign object in your tunic? What is it not? It's not called a tunic. What are those wrestlers things? The sling? I don't know.
Well, no, that's like King Kong Bundy would have the singlet.
Yeah,
the singlet. But these are more like I don't know.
His was more just like spandex bikini. It's like a little banana hammock.
Like a
That's why
Speedo.
It was like, how could that thing be in there? Yeah.
Love it. I loved how his promos with Mean Gene Okerlund, like whatever's lying around, if he's like, oh, I need something, I'll get a creamer, right? It would be a creamer. And you go, cream of the crop, the cream always rises, Mean Gene. It was amazing. Okay. I realize now, I'm like, okay, we're going to do 2 hours. I'm like, I feel like we just finished the intro. Like we should start the episode now. We're an hour and 18 minutes.
But we're actually...
So, okay, let me, Ed Keenan from the Toronto Star, if people want to read...
Are you going to have any promos that you got to do in a minute?
Okay. Do you want to go pee?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I'll be back in a moment.
And I will talk about a great podcast. Actually, I'm going to talk about... Wait, don't trip over my cables here, Ed Keenan. You'll be lying on the floor, pool of blood. It'll be a terrible scene down here. I want to urge all listeners to subscribe to the Advantaged Investor podcast from Raymond James Canada, hosted by Chris Cooksey, who just shaved his head. So Cooksey, if you're listening, you got a beautiful skull. You shaved your head in solidarity with your wife who's undergoing chemo treatments, and I think that's a beautiful thing. So it warmed the cockles of my heart. But that's not why you should listen to The Advantaged Investor. It's the experts, the best practices, the good advice you'll learn. Subscribe today. When Ed Keenan gets back, I'm going to give him a wireless speaker from Moneris. He may have one. In fact, I remember now hearing one in the backyard of his home during his 50th birthday party. But season 6 of Yes, We Are Open is dropping now, and there's a great episode with the staff at the River Cafe on Princess Island in downtown Calgary. That's right, Al Grego went to Calgary to cuddle with every Calgarian he could find, and this great story is a story of resilience that you won't believe, so check it out. Subscribe to Yes, We Are Open. I was just telling the listeners, Ed, that I heard music in your backyard at your 50th birthday party played on
A Moneris box and speaker.
I got a new one for you.
All right.
You don't need a new one because it's such a high quality speaker. Not that Moneris made it.
No, but I have multiple floors in
and
my
you have
house.
many children and multiple floors.
Yeah, no.
So, and now this is how far they've come. You can now, there's a QR code there, and you can just simply subscribe very easily on your smartphone. And Recycle My Electronics. When your Moneris wireless speaker does bite the dust, don't throw it in the garbage. Go to recyclemyelectronics.ca and put in your address, and then it'll be, hey, Ed, drop it off here, and we'll properly recycle that, and you will do that. So thank you to recyclemyelectronics.ca. Oh, lest we forget, I want to invite you. I want to invite you to TMLX 15 at Keenan. I don't know what you're doing on June 27th.
Ooh, I don't know.
It's a Thursday night
either.
It's an important day in the history of the world, really. But from 6 to 9 p.m., we're all going to collect at Great Lakes Brewery in Southern Etobicoke, and Palma Pasta is going to feed us. So come hungry, darling, because Palma Pasta's got you covered.
Well,
and because
now you are speaking my language, because it's an accepted fact of the Toronto Mike universe. It's Toronto Mike canon that it is the pasta that keeps me coming back.
Right. And you're getting a lasagna because, June 27th is still a little ways away. So to tide you over, I've got a lasagna in my freezer for you from Palma Pasta.
I may well, as of right now, be able to make it on the 27th.
Because that is my 50th birthday.
No way! Hey, all right. Well, that is
now
a
that I know you're going to be there,
There you go.
I can tell you that just to make sure you show up. Okay. All right. So where do I want to? There's a place I want to go, but I don't want to lose any questions from people. Mark Richardson, I'm going to read it, and hopefully you know exactly what we're talking about. He writes, he wants me to bring up with you the long and questionable history of Green Pea parking lots policy, pricing, and land acquisition practices at Toronto City Hall. Do you have any idea what Mr. Richardson's referring to? You've written about this in the past,
I
possibly?
probably have some idea what Mark Richardson's talking about. Now, this is maybe something where he's asking a question because he'd like me to talk about it, not because Mark Richardson likely knows more about it than I do. But basically, the green peas are like subsidized parking, right? Like the city runs green pea parking lots as an amenity to people, and they price them traditionally almost like they're a social service, right? Like they're subsidized in the same way that transit fares are subsidized, right? And so there's been a lot of argument over the many years that maybe they should be pricing that parking to generate more revenue for the city, but part of their mandate is to provide affordable parking for the people, and so their rates are closely monitored. But also, this becomes an issue that really overlaps with Mark Richardson's interests because they continue, or have until very recently, continued to buy up property to turn into surface parking lots, like often, to demolish a building that's on a site and put a surface parking lot there so that the neighborhood will have enough parking for its retailers, according to their estimates and whatnot, enough affordable parking, when a lot of people are saying, well, we should actually be taking those parking lots and turning them into housing. And recently the city has made some movement towards doing that under the current mayor. At the most recent city council meeting, there was a proposal to turn a certain number of green pea lots into housing. I think that's a positive thing. I have long thought that the city should at least during peak hours when parking is scarce, more appropriate market price. Like, I think if we're going to own a massive chain of parking lots, it should be a revenue source, not a cost. Especially downtown where we're trying to encourage more people to build transit. We need money to raise transit. So I don't know exactly what Mark was hoping I would touch on, but I imagine those are some of the things he was hoping that we would at least alert your listeners to the existence of.
Sure. No,
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Mark, he's back next quarter, so collect your questions and comments for Ed Keenan. He'll be here in 3 more months. Now, I read a headline, and I'm hoping you're up to speed on this, but it said the group fighting Ontario Place Spa scored a legal victory over Doug Ford. Do you know anything about this here? I'd like to blindside you with these topics.
No. I mean, and I should. I feel like I should know what that's about, but I don't actually.
Okay, well, for next visit, I need to know everything that's going on.
I'll have to
Ontario
get
Place.
back up to speed. I mean, the most recent things I've heard about Ontario Place, but I haven't checked in on purpose recently. But they were not positive things. They were. It seems like it's kind of it's a freight train now. This spa.
Well, my update, which is not fresh news, but I tweet this stuff in real time, so I try to be the first one to get these stories. But of course, because I bike by our 2 Trillium Park, anyways, by Ontario Place there, and it was kind of the world's longest blackboard for a while, right? Like, it was just this big black wall that we can't see what's going on the other side, but people would take their chalk and they would put these messages like, "Save the wildlife" and take your private spa elsewhere and all that kind of stuff. And the blackboard's gone. They put up like provincial propaganda pictures of people enjoying.
Excellent.
They don't reference the private spa though, but it's like, oh, this is going to be we're making this for you, Ontario. It's going to be wonderful. And they kind of.
I think the people at Therme, too, to be fair to them, do like it if you say spa and water park.
No,
there will be water slides there and stuff too. I think a spa, and I realize, because I'm one of the people who's constantly talking about it as a spa, and I realize, well, it does raise the image in your mind of people with having cucumbers placed on their heads and being massaged, where it's also kids having fun on water slides. There's that too. Which
is what we remember at Ontario Place, water stuff going on there. That's my memories. Anyways, the
water slide tower is one of the stairway for it is one of the things that's still there on the abandoned, but no slides attached to it.
No slides attached to it.
That would have been when they had abandoned that park.
Yep.
If they had just left those slides up there for people to use or skateboard on, or right, if you're gonna have an abandoned park, it should be dangerous.
Do you have any memory of the really long slides that were in High Park when we were growing up?
Yeah, they're made of metal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were super long, made of metal, and it's like now when I think back, it's like they've been gone a long time. I think that's where the pirate park is or whatever. The
adventure playground. Yeah. I mean, I think they're on the hills that lead into that, and when you look at them now, they are not as super long hills as you remember those.
They're
slides
not nearly
being
as
from your
dangerous as I
childhood.
remember. They were just like suicide missions.
But yeah. I mean, and I did not grow up near High Park. We would go there for school regional cross-country meets. They no longer hold cross-country meets in High Park because people trample the... It's
probably at Centennial Park now by Rob Ford Stadium.
No, I mean, even our West End kids go out to Woodbine Beach for their cross-country, and it's all on the boardwalk. Because
my kids...
It's not up and down hills at all.
My kids go to Centennial Park.
Oh, okay.
But I'm on the other side of the Humber.
Right, so maybe you're in the Etobicoke.
Yeah, maybe Etobicoke goes to Centennial Park.
But so we would only visit High Park once or twice a year, always for these races or for whatever other school thing.
Right.
And yet I so vividly remember those slides because they were pow, just blowing your mind when you're a kid.
They were so long and so ridiculous and dangerous. And
if you're wearing little short shorts, they were so burn your legs, searing your legs.
Third degree burns for sure. Absolutely. Look, we survived the 80s, and that's how my kid's
We chain smoked our way through it, drinking 50 out of stubbies.
Right, we got like a skate park, and we're he's almost 10, my third born, and where he wants a skateboard and everything, and it's like, okay, your elbow pads, your knee pads, your helmet or whatever. Like you should. I was skateboarding down. Like you should wearing nothing. Like forget knee pads and elbow pads and helmet. Like it's like nothing. Like I never thought twice about it, and that explains all the brain damage at Keenan, because we were not taking the proper precautions. Okay. We talked earlier about the housing, and I wanted to get clarification on what Doug Ford has against fourplexes. Like, maybe if you don't mind, before I do something fun on the way out.
Yeah, there was so Doug Ford, like every politician in Canada, has tried to make housing his signature issue, right? Getting it built, getting her done. At one point, he's like, raise the green belt. We're putting housing on it. And then he's like, he had to backtrack from that. There's a bunch of things where he had to backtrack. But he's like changing the laws for how things get approved. There was this suggestion that fourplexes, which is like a duplex, except instead of 2 units, there's 4 in it.
Right.
And so he reassured the people of Richmond Hill and elsewhere in the 905, all these suburban municipalities, that he would not force local governments to permit fourplexes as of right, which was kind of like a lot of people are thinking that's kind of your minimum, like not quite minimum, but close to the minimum of signaling you're making a real change in how the zoning applies. Like, so that if I buy a monster home and I want to turn it into a fourplex on the same footprint where it's going to have 4 apartments in it, that would just be allowed, and I don't have to fight my neighbors, and I don't have to fight the zoning, and I don't have to whatever. Well, he's not in favor of that. And his quote, and I don't have it in front of me, so I, like from memory though, it was something like, don't worry folks, we're not going to have the fourplexes, we're going to have homes. Which is like the most revealing thing. And then he said like single family homes and townhouses, right? But it's the revealing thing about that is that it indicates, and now then he started talking about how we couldn't have them 4 stories or 6 stories in your subdivision, right? Like we're not going crazy here. But first of all, most fourplexes are not 4 stories tall. They're usually the same size as a house, right? Like,
right.
4 apartments doesn't necessarily mean 4 floors. They're often like a split. There are a bunch of them all over the city that are 2 or 3 stories tall and have 4 apartments in them. But I think what I found revealing about that kind of particular comment, and you see this with Doug Ford sometimes, where like sometimes the guy just misspeaks, but sometimes the way he misspeaks seems to indicate the way he thinks about things, where he doesn't think an apartment is a real house or is a real home, right? He thinks when he says homes, he means single-family homes, and then he sort of qualifies with also a townhouse, I guess, right? If it's attached on both sides, it can still be a home.
But it can also semis maybe or homes.
Yeah, and like townhouses. But like if it's not a house,
right,
it's not a home. Yeah. And that's not the kind of thing we want to encourage building.
No.
And the interesting thing, or like one of the troubling things to me about that is, first of all, like lots of people live in apartments, right? Like I have spent much of my life living in an apartment.
Sure.
Then lots of people I love live in apartments. Lots of people I know consider those apartments to be their homes.
Right.
But also, if you look at how given the price of real estate here, we may need to change, like the up and coming generation and generations may need to sort of like, if they're going to love Toronto, if they're going to be able to afford to live here, change their thinking about what a home looks like, right? And so we do have some models in like the condos that have been going up. But I think if we look at other cities where they really have a bigger history of higher density than here, like New York and Montreal, are 2 examples where I've spent a lot of time. I took my kids over the March break to Montreal, just me and the 3 kids. And it had been long enough that like they couldn't really remember it very clearly from before, because the last time we had gone was before we moved to Washington, D.C. So they'd all been there multiple times, but like not recently. And they're young enough that those 4 or 5 years, 6 years since they've been there is like a big chunk of their life.
Of course.
Right? My kids loved about Montreal when they're walking around, like all these swooping, beautiful staircases that go up to the second floor. It's like the 1.5 floor. And it's like this standard feature of Montreal streetscapes is these staircases leading up. And now part of that is how their building codes have required or allowed these external staircases rather than internal ones. And it creates this unique kind of visual feature. But part of it is actually that it is standard in many parts of Montreal that people will live in flats, that these houses will be duplexes or triplexes.
Yes.
Almost every single one on the block. And this is in a lot of the desirable parts, so not out in Westmount,
Right.
but like in all the parts of downtown Montreal, and in all the parts of like central Mont, in the hipper parts of town. Like these neighborhoods were built that way. And generations of French Canadians, generations of Jewish Canadians, of Anglo-Montrealers grew up in a place where, yes, okay, there were rich bankers out in Westmount, right? There are suburbs of Montreal that look like suburbs of everywhere else. But in the city, lots of families live in apartments. They live in a flat, essentially. They live on one floor. Those are purpose-built that way, and they're spacious. They're large. They have balconies on them. They have, and they're a reasonable place where a person might live, right? They're not sandwiched in. And those are homes, right? And in New York City, the richest people often rent an apartment, right? They rent an apartment that might be beautiful. It might be often still small, even if you're rich. There was a whole joke. I'm trying to remember who it was, some celebrity or somebody who had said at one point that like when they were watching a Woody Allen movie, like Hannah and Her Sisters, they were like, I just want an apartment. I just want to be able to afford an apartment like the one she has in that movie, right?
Right.
And then they realized, oh, that's actually Mia Farrow's apartment. Like that's being able to afford that means being an internationally famous movie star, right? But so like rich people in New York City and in a lot of these world cities like live in apartments. In Paris, like people live in apartments, and those are homes. They make homes there and they build them as homes. They build them to be homes, right? And I think the mentality that somehow you're not building a home if it's not a full house is like both dismissive of a lot of people who live in homes that don't fit that definition now, but also it's like if we're ever going to get to a point where we like are building housing in a way that gives people a shot at being able to live in the city on a average like worker's salary, we're going to have to change our idea of what a proper home looks like. And so Doug Ford is not there yet.
Doug Ford is not there yet. There's your headline. Okay. I would like to spend a little time on like a sports cast here. We'll call it sports talk here. I would love an update from you on our Toronto PWHL team.
Oh, that is just
on
about
fire,
my
right?
favorite topic these days. Yeah.
Okay, talk to me.
Their winning streak did come to an end.
Oh, okay. So I missed that up.
But it was 11 games. No, 10 games.
Amazing, though, because they've only played
it was huge because
like a dozen.
at the beginning of the season, everybody kept saying quietly, especially like they were really hyped up about it. And they would be saying like, but why do they have to suck? Why do Toronto sports teams,
rough
why
start,
do you know, it's because like they lost most of their first 4 or 5 games. I think they got one win squeezed in there, but they lost the first 2 in a row or 3 in a row. And then it was like just a rough start.
Right.
And then they just started winning, and for a while it's like Shorzy, like I never want to lose again. You just think this team is never going to lose again. And right. I think the last time I was here, the season had just started, right? Like,
yeah. I
had
seasons.
My whole family had fallen in love with Emma Malte, who we still love, and we sit in a section of Madame Marina where that's called Emma Nation. There are big banners that identify it as Emma Nation.
Wow.
There are some super fans in the front that bring all these Emma posters and hand them out. They have made Emma Maltese mini sticks that they hand out to anyone who wants them in the area. We still love her. But also, I went in with warm feelings about Natalie Spooner, both because I had seen her play on the old Toronto Furies at George Bell Arena the 1 or 2 seasons when that was their home rink. She's a Scarborough girl. She went to high school a block from where I lived in Scarborough. It would have been the high school I had gone to if I hadn't gone to a Catholic high school. And so she's younger than me, but she's from the hood, right? She's my homegirl. So and then I found out, or I had been following, and I'd seen the commercials and stuff from her Olympic team that she has had a child, she has a toddler, she gave birth in last year, right? Or it was late 2022, I think. But so she had a kid less than a year old when the season launched, right? And yet she's back in the saddle, suited up. So I already had all this warm feelings for her, and then she just became the most dominant player. Just she's got, I think, I don't have the statistics in front of me, but I think after 20 games she's got 16 goals. Which, if you look at the point per game pace, it's if she was playing a whole NHL season, that would project out to be 62, 63 goals, something like that on the season, which is Austin Matthews-esque. But then you look and see that second on that list of scoring leaders is 9 goals, right? It falls way off, right? Marie-Philippe Poulin, these people who are famous for being just greatest of all time, the greatest in the world, maybe more hyped than Natalie Spooner, have not even 2/3 as many goals as her. At one point, it's she was going to lap them, right? And so if you look at it compared to the average goals in that league, there's fewer goals per game in the PWHL. It's all the more impressive. She's just having such a dominant season. But when you see her in person playing there too, or if you see her on TV, she just takes over games. She puts that team on her back and just goes and does what she wants. She has skills that I think we'll see sharpened and more common in the women's game as this league evolves and players are playing together as teams and they're drilling stuff in practice, and they're professionals who are able to practice every day and not work full-time side jobs, right? But the way she parks in front of the net, the way she scores from in the paint, the way she controls the puck from behind the net and drives through traffic in a fairly physical league is something you see more often in the NHL, but you don't, not a lot of PWHL goals are scored that way. There's a lot more on the rush. There's a lot more shots from out at the top of the hash marks. There's a lot more of that. And it's impressive to me how well she does those things in this league. And I'm so excited about her. And so I'm so looking forward to that
when are
team
the playoffs?
Going into the playoffs. They, okay, so there's a 3-week break in the PWHL schedule right now, roughly, while the women's World Cup or the World Championship is taking place in Utica, New York. Canada opens tonight. I'm planning to watch that game at 7 because they have a whole line's worth of PWHL players there or more.
I'll bet.
Or PWHL Toronto players. Like in the rivalry series recently, Team Canada was running out a full Toronto PWHL line, right? With Natalie Spooner, Sarah Nurse, Emma Maltese, and then Renata Fast and Jocelyn Larocque on defense. That is a Toronto PWHL line, and it was dominating against the Americans. It scored all kinds of points in the last 2 games of that rivalry series. So I'm hyped about that. But there's towards the end of April, the PWHL season resumes. They've got, each team has, I think, 4 games left. And then the playoffs start in early May.
Exciting. In 2015, when the Pan Am Games were here in Toronto, and they had the relay, the torch relay, my local park, the torch was carried by Natalie Spooner.
There you go. There you go.
2015. Okay. And speaking of women's athletics, I'm just curious if you're watching any NCAA action, and particularly Caitlin Clark with Iowa State.
I have been reading about it more than I've been watching it.
You didn't see the LSU, the rematch against LSU?
I watched some highlights of it.
Angel
I
Reese?
didn't actually watch the game itself,
Okay.
but I did seek out online some highlights, and I've read a lot about it. And like I said, I have never been a big March Madness guy, but usually I see some of the men's games, and this year I have seen a bit of the women's games. I turned it on one night too, and I was trying to. It's kind of like I turn it on, and whatever game's on, I'll watch a little bit of.
Well, those first 2 days, the first 4 days of March Madness, on particularly on the men's side, it's just frenetic, right? It's just one game after another.
But
and
Iowa
finish
just
after
got
finish.
through to the Final Four, right?
Yes. Okay,
Yeah.
so it was like, I think 10 threes for Caitlin Clark. Amazing game.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't
That
even...
performance against LSU
Yeah.
did seem like, just statistically, like a superstar individual game, and she is like kind of an amazing player as a scorer.
Oh, yeah, well,
as a
I mean,
shooter,
you
as
should
a-
see should see the viewership for this game. Like, I watched it live, and the viewership was off the charts. So.
higher than any NBA game last year except one, higher than any NHL game last season.
Yep.
The highest rated women's basketball game of all time.
And I was tuned in, like for the
Yeah.
rematch, because I watched the finals last year with LSU and the Iowa State. And I want to shout out Bruce Dobigan, who was just here and gave me a toque, an Iowa State toque. So go Caitlin. And on the men's side, though, I do want to shout out Zach Eady, Toronto guy, 7'4", plays for the Purdue Boilermakers, who are in the Final Four.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I'm rooting for Toronto. Zach Eady.
Go Zach. Now,
You know-
I've got a team in the Final Four.
Yeah.
Now that I know he's there.
Now that you know he's there, and they don't make a lot of 7'4" guys, and it's something else
what
to
Mike
watch this guy.
Babcock used to say, he's 7'4" every day. Right?
Well, you can't teach height, is
Yeah.
what I heard here. All right, this is a fun thing we're going to do on the way out here. I think the timing's perfect here. So, are you watching Toronto Blue Jays?
I have been watching them. Yeah, they.
Okay, so if you take, no, I guess you can't. So
Sink
I
or swim
mentioned
so far this year,
Keegan
but-
Matheson and Gregor Chisholm were here
Yeah.
the other day, and we set up the season, and we talked in great detail too about the Phantom Otani flight and how that I believe it was Gregor who called it journalistic. What was his term? But basically misconduct of some nature.
Right.
Like because of how poor the journalism was on that. Anyway, so this is a great episode. I highly recommend it. But this series in Houston, which was a 3-gamer, we were no hit. Okay, so we're no hit. And then we basically, I don't know what, I can't remember, but it was 2 outs in the 9th when we got our only runs. And we
it was
squeaked out a win.
Yeah.
Davis Schneider hits a 2-run
We
homer.
were down to our last
out. Yeah.
and then a 2-run homer.
So you did get a win. So and then we were one hit or something.
One hit, yeah.
So I was thinking if you don't hit that 2-run homer with 2 outs in the 9th, it's like a cumulative score of 19-0 or something, and you get 3 hits or something the whole series.
Yeah.
Whatever. But so tough times with the bats.
The first
and
series
everything.
with the Tampa with the Rays,
yeah, it was swings
was also like a feast or famine, right? Like
absolutely. Feast or famine.
5-1 in the first game, and then I'm trying to remember, but yeah, they kind of got shut down.
Yeah, you
in
won
one
big,
game,
you lose big,
but then
you
they
win
won
big.
2 big. So,
Right, so.
But I mean, you and I talked at the end of last year's Blue Jays season. I was just saying, I missed the old fun Blue Jays, right? Like, it wasn't just that this team lost. It was like, where's the identity? Where's the fun?
They
Where's the
put great
spirit? Where
efforts
were their
into
bats, right? Like,
removing
where
a lot of the fun, right?
Yeah.
Like,
and I had through spring training this year, and I still have hope. It's like early in the year.
it's super
right?
early.
But if the fear was that this team wasn't going to find its way back on offense again, and with tools like guys like Vladdy Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette and now Justin Turner, who's getting old but still
39.
he can still mash, and maybe there's the hint of the possibility of Votto coming
40
in here, and but it's just like there's this team should be able to hit a bit, and if that these no hitters and one hitters at the beginning of the year is this doesn't seem like it's going to be fun. But this is a long season, and I don't think what have they played now? Is 6 games?
Yep.
Yeah. It's too
Well,
early.
you know, it's 7 games.
7.
Actually.
Yeah.
We're 3
There's
and
4
4
against
3 and 4,
Tampa, right? Yeah.
And we got today off. Yeah, no doubt about it. 162 games. You don't judge anything on the first 6 games. But last year we did struggle at the plate.
Yeah.
And we didn't do anything, in my opinion. You know, you lose a Chappie, you bring in a Turner. Like there's no significant upgrade on offense.
Yeah.
And just you mentioned a couple of guys. One guy I'm all in on, Bo Bichette. I think he's the team. I think he's a superstar. And Vladdy Guerrero, we had this chat the other day, and I urge people to check it out. But, you know, you ask a Keegan Matheson or a Gregor Chisholm, they don't know who he is. Like, we still don't know who he is.
Well, and that's, I think
Jr.
a lot of people are like that. And it's like, well, was it just one season? Except that was the season that was foretold, right? The whole time he was coming up, he was the next one. He was, and then he had a couple good years, but that one MVP caliber year in particular, where it was like, okay, this is the player we were told he was going to be.
Right.
And then something happened, right? He dropped off. And it's not like his numbers are terrible, but like the whole thing is that he's not the superstar. He's not the record breaker. And I mean, I think he still may turn out to be that
he's
guy.
only
But
25
I don't
years
disagree
old,
with
believe it or
them
not,
that I mean, they follow this team a lot closer from me. But my own sense is like kind of like he's gotta find his way back into that. And I think there's got to be a way. But it's not a coincidence. It doesn't feel like a coincidence to me, and it may well be a coincidence. But it doesn't feel like a coincidence to me that when they got rid of all his best friends on the team because they thought they were all having too much fun and not taking it seriously enough, that suddenly he forgot how to hit. Like, I think Vladdy seems like the kind of guy who needs to be having fun out there to play his best, right? I don't know.
Yeah, you're talking about Lourdes Gurriel Jr., and you're talking about Teoscar Hernandez, and we gave up bat for defense, and of course that Gabriel Marino is going to haunt us for the next decade, right? But we can go on. Jay's talk, love it, love talking it. But I want to revisit a song. So do you remember the early 90s when we had the Variety Village compilations? And I can't remember what we talked about. Maybe we have.
I don't think I do.
Okay, so here I have them here. This is how organized I am. So you can take a glance at
I'll
these.
see if they
There's
look
a couple.
familiar to me. I don't remember these.
I was a big fan of these. They were like parody songs and Blue Jays songs. Loved them very much. I actually have them all digitized. I'm a big fan of them all. But there's one I want to kind of, maybe you and I are going to listen to this and kind of react to this in real time.
We fought them all and the Jays won.
Yeah.
I don't remember any of these, but I can tell by reading the titles how some of them go.
Well, good guess on that one. So a lot of, Aaron Davis would appear on one, or brother Jake Edwards, or humble Howard Glassman. And I'm going to play a song that's kind of too good to be true. This recently got played on an FOTM KOTJ. By the way, if you want to be a part of the next FOTM KOTJ, where I put compilations of listeners' submissions, okay, just record yourself talking about a song you love about money, okay? We're doing money jams for tax season here. 30 to 90 seconds, you talking about a song you love that's about money, and send that audio file to mike@torontomike.com, and you're going to be on the episode here. So, Ed, are you ready to listen to a song called Do It Again, Blue Jays? Are you ready to listen to this and we can react?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so just you can talk over it. I'll bring it down. It's like a fever dream. Are you ready? Here we go.
Yeah.
It's got a good groove, right?
Hello, everybody. This is Tom Cheek, and with me is Jerry Howard.
And fans, we'd like to send you some musical Blue Jay inspiration to help cheer the team on to victory.
So get your toes a-tapping and your fingers a-snapping.
You do the singing, and we'll do the rapping.
All right, you do the singing, we'll do the rapping. I was wondering if they were going to start breaking to singing.
Well, it won't be so singing. It'll be more rapping.
But was that an example of their rapping
Jerry,
there?
Well, here
it's
it is.
another great night as our beloved Jays get ready for flight.
That's right, Tom. The stage is set. What you hear is what you get.
Leading off for the Jays tonight, Mr. Lightning, Devon White. Devo strokes one through the gap.
And Robbie follows with a two-base rap. The Jays score first to start the show. But here comes more, because here comes Joe.
He hits one deep, he got it all. Way back, it's off the wall.
Okay, so
Tom
there we have...
Cheek has a bit more like natural flow. I mean, it's Jerry's radio delivery is more staccato, like more,
Right.
but
Top of the third, count is full. On the mound is Mr. Cool.
Hey, this big guy will win a few.
Count remains 3-2. Guzman sets and fires one in.
Kirby Puckett strikes out again.
This is
3 more
1992.
pitches, all they need.
Yeah, with Juan Guzman, yeah, I think
Yeah.
you're 92 here. So-
Which, in fairness
Yep.
to these guys, or recognition of them, that style of rap was much more of the time. Like,
Is it, what do you think? It's like a Big Daddy Kane? What do we listen?
Yeah.
Swings, we're talking sweet. He'll knock a few 500 feet.
but that's sort of like
Here
bop
comes
bop
the
bop
pitch,
bop bop
blowing
bop
in.
bop
Big
bop
John
bop bop
patiently
bop
checks
bop
his
bop
swing.
bop.
Next pitch line to center field. There she goes, a 3-run deal.
Crank it up.
Unbelievable. Like, this was an era where everybody was rapping, right? Right? Like Rodney Dangerfield had a rap song.
Yeah.
Jays have put on quite a show
chart-topping
tonight.
rap song.
And here comes Gruber to keep things right.
Kelly swings on the first pitch he faces. A 2-out single to load the bases.
Now this one's surely worth the wait. Big Dave Winfield takes the plate.
92.
Winfield swing and a miss.
So now-
strike one.
So 92 is the only year that Winfield played for the Blue
I'm
Jays.
looking at these collections, and so was there a... I noticed at first, like, oh, this cross-collaboration, all these different radio stations represented, and then I guess they would get, like, every radio station would contribute a song, because then that station would play it on their own morning show and stuff, right? They
Yeah,
would promote
possibly.
it. Yeah.
Very possible that, so that's 92, which means you get a Fred Patterson and a Humble entry from different
Yeah,
stations because
Oh.
Humble and Fred form in 89, and then they're together for a couple of years, and then Howard quits for a job at Mix 99.9
That's right, and they were separated.
for like 18
Yeah.
months or something, and that's when... Well, so I'll play a little of that, though.
The Blue Jays are back in the winner's circle here.
Are these diss tracks? Do they, like, take shots at each other?
No, they're pretty kind and
come
gentle, actually. Okay, so I mentioned Humble Howard, and I do produce the Humble and Fred show today. So it is with great interest that just before I play some Lowest Little Low to take us
I
home.
just gotta say, it was nice to hear Tom Cheek's voice. Like,
And he's
it's
good. He's
always-
good at that. It's the
And
voice of
Jerry
my
too. I
summers.
miss Jerry too, but Jerry still emails me now and again.
Yeah. Okay.
So
I still hear from him too.
yeah. So
He's a big Facebook messenger for me, Jerry Howard. So this is Humble Howard singing here.
All the fans are up for the game. Makes you want to scream and shout.
Production.
It's a Blue Jay party. Nothing left to chance.
this is from '92, but this has a very 1987 kind of sound to it.
Going for the grand slam.
Yes, it does.
Gonna knock it into the stands.
Now, is Howard providing the background vocals as well as the lead vocals? Because that does sound like him saying Blue Jays, Blue
He
Jays
might,
as well
he
as
might.
that's clearly him doing the "Let's Go All the Way" thing too.
Yeah, Blue Jays all the way. Blue Jay victory.
That's him for sure going,
Make it a reality. Dominate the majors.
Now, was his Mix 99 show called The Breakfast Club? Because this is
Oh, I don't think.
attributed to Humble
Oh.
Howard and the Breakfast Club band.
It must have been.
Yeah.
Yeah. He tells me, and I believe, of course it must be true, but he's the first person to say Mix 99.9 on the radio because it was just called CKFM
Ah.
until the morning, I don't know what it is, the morning after Labor Day or whatever, when the Humble Howard is the morning show, and he says Mix 99.9. It's the first time.
Oh, there you go.
And it's been a while, I guess, because it's been Virgin Radio for a while. Okay, one more here loaded up for you. We'll bring down Humble Howard here. This is the one I think is so good. Like, this is not from those CDs, okay? So this was like a Chum
okay.
Chum FM or something. I think this is a great song.
I love the day games, the night games too. I love the clinchers when they're tied at 2. I love the coaches, the entire crew. I love the Blue Jays. I love the diamond and a bleacher seat. Who's on the schedule? Who can we defeat? I'll buy a hot dog, 'cause I love to eat and watch the Blue Jays.
So this song is called We Got the Blue Jays, and it is known as the RBI single version. And what do you think?
So there are multiple versions. That RBI single version implies that there's like an album version or maybe a dance remix.
Yeah, possibly, but I do have memories now. I
do love it. Just perfect. It's going through all the things that he loves, and then he's just like, I buy a hot dog because I love to eat and watch the Blue Jays.
Very specific.
Who among us is that not true of?
But they're hard to get. I'd win some money if we're allowed to bet. 11 innings and it ain't over yet. I love the Blue Jays. Blue Jays! Will they be playing by the lake today or on the road? So far away.
This is when they're still in Exhibition Stadium.
Yeah, this is definitely from Exhibition Stadium. Hey, do you remember the longest, the most inning game that you've ever attended for the Toronto Blue Jays? Do you know?
In person?
Yeah, in person.
I think probably 9. I'm trying to remember if I've ever been there for an extra innings game or not.
So I was at a 18 inning game.
Oh, wow.
I believe it was 2013, I believe. But yeah, I've attended an 18 inning game, which at the time I think was the longest game in Blue Jay history, and I think the record was broken at some point shortly thereafter. But so yeah, I have.
I've watched a lot of extra innings games, but I have not watched them in person. So.
Ed, as always, I was going to try to nail 2 hours, and I see I'm at like 2 hours and 1 minute, so I blew that one.
Oh, so we blew right by. This is an extended play version.
Ed, always a pleasure, man.
Hey.
The day after your visit, I start my Google document for your next visit, and I see here the first thing on the Google document I decided not to bring up because I just didn't want to talk about it. Budget day happened since your last visit, and I'm like, I don't really feel like doing it. I mean, I just don't feel like it. So
it was a while ago then.
It was like early in shortly after your last visit. But I can't wait for next quarter when you drop by. I love it very much.
Yeah, well, it's always fun to come by. It's just ramble on and.
Do our macho impressions.
I am intimidated by Ed Keenan's flex over here. Holy shit. I gotta share this video. And that brings us to our 1466th show. You can follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky. I'm at Toronto Mike. I don't know what you're updating or wherever. I know you're still on Twitter.
I'm not doing a lot of social media right now. I mean, I still check it for messages and stuff, and I check it.
So buy a newspaper? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, there's also thestar.com, and I host a podcast there. I am one of a couple hosts of the This Matters podcast over at The Star as well, so you can subscribe to that on all your favorite platforms.
Absolutely. You're my second Toronto Star guest.
You can always email me, ekeenan@thestar.ca.
Send all those hot tips to ekeenan@thestar.ca, and make sure you copy Mike at torontomike.com. I want to know what's going on in this city, okay? It's important to me. Let me know if there's a vacancy tax I need to know about it. Much love to all who made this possible. That is Great Lakes Brewery. By the way, I thoroughly enjoyed my hop pop.
Super good.
Very good. Palma Pasta. There's a lasagna in my freezer for you, Ed Keenan. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Raymond James Canada. Their podcast is called The Advantaged Investor. The Toronto Maple Leafs baseball team will be in touch because May 12 is the home opener, and I would love to see you there. And there's other games too, so it's like we're gonna hook up at Christie Pitts.
Are you gonna be podcasting from there?
There's a section. I don't know if it's on the hill or whatever. There's a section there, and I'm gonna have I'm gonna have open my mics and my stuff set up.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, so
that sounds
it's a
like
whole
a lot
thing
of fun.
here. It'll be Ed Keenan, Rick.
Is that
Emmett.
just for opening day, or are you like the on-scene broadcaster for the whole season?
I have said I'll do one game in May, one game in June, one game in July, and one game in August. So 4 games in total that I will be recording there. I'll probably attend more games, but May 12 I'll be there, and then I'll announce what game in June I'll be there. But
sounds like
we'll
fun.
get you there, Ed Keenan. It's gonna be a good time. So shout out to the Toronto Maple Leafs baseball team. And Moneris, they're back for season 6 of Yes, We Are Open. That's awesome. And Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of this community, and the official funeral home of the Toronto Maple Leafs baseball team. That's not a joke. That is true. Is that exciting?
It is super exciting. I can't imagine being the official partner of the Toronto Maple Leafs baseball team.
And
I'm just like the official spectator. Like I always
You're the
get
fan of the
season
game.
tickets. I'm there on the lawn.
See you all tomorrow. Making his Toronto Mike debut, this is exciting, is Steve Patterson from the Debaters on CBC. And I've never had him over here, so he's going to come over here and see what all the fuss is about. So tune in for tomorrow's episode with Steve Patterson. See you then.